I'm Haley Taylor, and you're listening to the Rough Draft Diaries. We've been on a nature kick lately on the Rough Draft Diaries, and that theme continues as we meet Hal Mann, the president of the Northwest Ohio chapter of Wild Ones.
And lest anybody think Wild Ones is maybe a motorcycle group, I always used to say that we're not a motorcycle group. Wild Ones is a national not-for-profit organization with local chapters that teach the many benefits of growing wildflowers and other native plants in our yards.
So the mission of Wild Ones is to raise public awareness regarding the benefits of native plants, to somehow persuade the general public that if they were to include native plants in their homes and in public landscapes, they could essentially reduce stormwater runoff, they could reduce unnecessary use of water, fuel, and lawn chemicals, they could provide food for pollinators like monarch butterflies, and they could ensure a future for these native plants, as some of them are being displaced by other non-native invasive species.
You know, we participate in a lot of things. It's gotten to the point we're asked to participate in more things than we have the ability to do. We're just all volunteers. So then we had something like 30 members, and we're now at 130.
So that's 130 members volunteering in our community to supply resources and information for family and businesses to plant native species. They do this through workshops, through meetings, and presentations. Hal gives a lot of presentations, and these speeches can range from the topic of introducing native plants to Pope Francis and the monarch butterfly. Now, you may think, since Hal is essentially the face of our local chapter, he is the president of the Northwest Ohio chapter, that he must have had a deep background in gardening and native plants. But that's actually not the case. The Northwest Ohio chapter began around 2007, but Hal first became aware of the organization in 2011, when he decided to make a big change in his backyard.
I make my living for the last 11 years as a day trader. When I started, it was sitting in front of a computer and buying stocks and bonds all day. As I'd be sitting in front of my computer looking out over our backyard, I was thinking that, it'd be kind of nice to get involved in some landscaping. So I hooked up into the Master Gardener program. During that process, I'd work with the Wood County Park District installing native plants around the parks, and I had no idea what these plants were. And so eventually I found out that these were the plants that evolved here literally over thousands and thousands of years. These were the plants that were here before the European settlers came. And somebody told me that because of that, they were low maintenance because they're mostly perennials, and these plants are perfectly adapted to our soil. So they don't need any water once they're established. They don't need any or want any fertilizer because everything was right here. And so I was sucked into that whole thing. I thought, no maintenance is good. I'm all about that.
It was only natural that as Hal progressed further and further into the world of native plants that he should find Wild Ones and start going to their meetings. There he learned more and more about what was going on in his backyard.
And then I found out that there was a nature connection, that all our wildlife literally depends on these plants because they co-evolved with them over thousands and thousands of years. I think one of your guests not too long ago talked about the milkweed plant and the monarch butterfly, and that's probably the most well-known connection between nature and a native plant. But those connections exist in many, many, many cases. And then there's, second degree of connection to the plant. So all our birds and all our wildlife really ultimately depends on these plants.
Hal fell headfirst into the world of conservation and naturalism. After learning more and more about native plants, he became a master gardener. He implemented his own native garden in his backyard, and he eventually became the president of the Northwest Ohio chapter of Wild Ones. All this change is kind of shocking to Hal as he looks back on what his life once looked like.
It really was a brand new experience for me. I was always pretty shy and introverted. So when this came along and I saw the importance of this and was more or less, I forced myself into doing public speaking, that was a huge shock for me. So things have been moving along pretty rapidly in that regard. And so, no, it's a big change. And yes, I'm enjoying it, but at the same time, it's a lot of work. I'm trying to assess every day. I'm trying to assess where I should be spending my time to be most effective in getting this message out.
Although it is a big job, it's one that Hal is prepared to do. And it becomes easier for Hal as he looks around at the world around him and the journey he's taken to become a passionate advocate for using native plants.
It's so interesting to me as I've gone through this journey and I continue on this journey that I've come to realize how all life is connected. This journey has been pretty amazing and has been a spiritual one as well. To look at nature, look at these little creatures. If you get down in the milkweed patch, you'll see tons of little tiny creatures that are just amazing. And I look at how all this fits together. It is just, it's mind-boggling.
I'm Haley Taylor, and thanks for listening to this episode of the Rough Draft Diaries. Hal's choices for the next episode of the Rough Draft Diaries include...
Well, I'd say number 1 is Todd Crail. Number 2 would be Marilyn Dufour. And then Eileen Mitras.
Make sure to tune in next time to find out who I pick on the Rough Draft Diaries.